wait a second. I mean, maybe earnings are really in trouble. Maybe NVIDIA is not going to make the quarter, which is really, what is this one about?
I know.
It's about NVIDIA not making the quarter.
All right, but we still got a few weeks to wait on that.
Well, that's the problem.
A couple of weeks to wait. And to your point on the AI narrative changing a bit, wouldn't it have to be that report that conceivably would do that?
It has to be Jensen himself coming on and saying, look, I've met with every major banker. I've met with every major investor. And the demand is there. And the reason the demand is there is because you get 3 to 4x return, which is what he says, but he's been so quiet because it's in quiet. And by the way, there's companies that in quiet kind of leak things to analysts, even though they shouldn't.
Right.
And then there are companies that are just a steel vault. Finding out anything about NVIDIA, a lot of made-up stuff about NVIDIA in the last few weeks. Just made-up stuff.
I mean, it starts the day at about a $2.5 trillion market value. Obviously,
well, people hate that, too.
A lot less than it was not long ago.
I read a piece last week that said, now we know.
A lot more than it was not that long.
How about the piece was like, now we know the 1,000% gain was completely fraudulent. And it's like, no.
Come on. Yeah.
No, it had $1 trillion almost lopped off. I mean, the company... Geez, the market cap took a hit.
It did. The multiple got up there.
Right, but remember, this is always you have to think about this as a previous multiple. Like, you realize that the company was selling at 17 times earnings.
And there's been this argument, it gets back to sort of the larger one, that at some point they're going to hit a wall, or at some point the spending will hit a wall. Not in 2025. Certainly not this year, what's left of it, but perhaps in 26 or 27, where the hyperscalers, they're done.
Yeah, but you know what?
And what is that going to mean when you do a discounted cash flow valuation of this company? And are you willing to pay the multiple? And that certainly seems to have circulated through
and that really
some of that.
No, you're right.
Affected the stock price.
But I want to ban the term hyperscaler at this point because no one ever understood. It's like yen carriage.
I don't know
what the hell is that?
It's one of those.
Hyperscaler.
You know what? You're right. It's like, what is?
Right?
Who made that one up?
The hyperscaler?
Yeah,
I did.
You did.
No. But here's what I see.
What should we call them?
Well, I like tech titans, which is what they call them, Arista Networks.
Or how about just giant planet-eating companies?
I like that. It's kind of like Stephen King like.
Planet eaters.
Planet eaters.
Yeah.
From now on, let me know. Okay, so listen, the PE's already taken. Okay, let's just go over what really happened with these companies.
Okay.
Meta had a great quarter, and it was because he figured out how to use AI. I don't know if you're using Meta AI. I've switched entirely to Meta AI. I no longer use Chat. I don't use Gemini.
Really?
I don't use Claude, whatever.
Monet. No kidding.
I love it. I love it. It's oh my God, it's so great. It's so much better than the other companies. It's coherent. It doesn't, there's no dross. There's no like.
Wait, what platform do you use it on? In other words, what are you going to use it?
What I do is I type in Meta AI.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting. It's like typing in how you type in Google?
Yeah.
Just like
That's
that.
it? You get it?
Yeah. And it comes up, it's very simple. They have 3 ads that you have to deal with, which you just look at and dismiss.
Yeah.
And then, compare, please
you.
tell me the Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. I mean, it is so succinct, and it is so good. And I mean, I could pull a million. Please tell me about Caterpillar and its exposure to data centers.
Tax-free on the way out, by the way, Roth
well, that's that's why I always tell people, go for Roth.
I can be your AI if you want.
No, you're amazing.
What was the question about Caterpillar? Can I answer that
no,
one
I'm just saying you could, I don't know, where's David Faber's daughter going to college?
Yeah, I can tell you that
she
as well.
She looked at 4 schools, and he said this. No, I mean, what am I supposed to do? How do I demonstrate prowess? I think that what I'm saying is that company had a good quarter.
Yes, it did.
Alphabet, we have no idea.
No idea.
Okay? And when I say Alphabet, no idea, I mean, they lose this case, of which I've done a substantial amount of work on with Apple.
Go there. So now I've got control of the board. I'm just going to go back to your favorite NVIDIA because the stock is up 2.5%.
Oh, they do these daily options. You ever seen that?
Yes.
The kids do daily options?
Yes.
And then they do their lineup in DraftKings, and they do their daily option. Is there anything different? Daily? Yes, there is. DraftKings is more rigorous.
No, it's an important point in the gamification of the stock market.
No, younger people, when I speak, I happened to be at a fabulous wedding this weekend, my friend Rob Bradel's son, and I always ask people, what's going on? And the younger people, David, they are doing zero options, and they're doing it on NVIDIA. And they're doing it on whatever is just the hot stock of the day.
Right.
And instead of, I asked anyone, has anyone investing? No one investing. But it doesn't matter. Monica and Michael, fabulous wedding. But there was absolutely no substance to anybody's trading.
Yeah.
It might as well have been daily fantasy.
We've been going that way for a long time. I mean,
It's
remember,
discouraging.
the average hold time, even for a mutual fund investor, continues to contract, I believe.
But we should mention
well.
Qualcomm down 6. That's because of stories that Apple's integrating more.
Right.
And may not need Qualcomm.
Using fewer chips.
Apple's been trying to integrate for ages. Hasn't really worked. Broadcom should not be down unless you think that there is, this is, again, data center. If you think data center is bad.
Because he has made several, including buying more of one of today's leaders, and that is NVIDIA. Probably the reason in and of itself, while tech is one of the only 2 sectors in the green today. Why'd you add to this?
If you remember, we did trim NVIDIA back at 130, and I jumped the gun last time I was there on set with you, and we had that post-Fed rally and started buying back some NVIDIA 115 area. So when we saw that move last week, I really do think that there was some capitulation. I mean, we saw the unwind in tech. Everybody's covered it over and over again. But I think that spike in volatility really lays the great groundwork to see, a low that could really rally here in the coming weeks and into NVIDIA's earnings report. So I think the setup here is really well. I know Josh has talked about the gap going back to May in the 90s for NVIDIA, and that pinged it last Monday. So after achieving that gap, looking at my high expectations for this earnings report and the good technical setup here, I had to buy some more NVIDIA and top off positions in portfolios when we were trading around $100 to finish out the week.
Bryn, you got NVIDIA, obviously. I think our viewers know that by now very well. But what about buying more here in what's been a reasonably unsettled stock?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I think last week, I had closed out all of my covered call positions in NVIDIA. I agree with Bill. I think it got washed out. I have a really nice position in here in NVIDIA, so I don't need to add here. But I really like the price action of NVIDIA going into earnings at the end of the month because there is a lot of concern. There's been some technical damage, and I feel pretty confident that Jensen's going to come out and deliver it because Mark Zuckerberg, Satya, Sundar, across the board have all told us they're buying Elon Musk, all of their chips. And so I think it's going to be a great number. So I think that's a really good add at these levels because I think at the end of the month, we start seasonally long, positive quarter for the market. I like NVIDIA here at 109 going into earnings.
Welcome back to the exchange. NVIDIA shares are up nearly 5% today and more than 9% despite last week's sell-off. While the volatility left some investors wary of the big AI names, our next guest saw the dip as a buying opportunity, upping his stake big time. Let's bring in fast money trader and Grasso Global CEO Steve Grasso. Give me the deets, Steve. It's good to see you.
Hey, you doing, Kelly? Yeah, this could have. I always love hindsight when it proves you're right. This was a binary instance, though. This could have went very bad against me if the macro market sold off. It didn't, so I look great, on a micro basis after the fact. I own NVIDIA. I originally owned NVIDIA, I should say, in the 120s was my average, and I expanded that position considerably. So now my average is around 102. So that's how much I was buying on that dip. Once again, that dip could have gained more strength. Market could have sold off more precipitously. It didn't. So once I started to see the market solidify, I really leaned into that position for NVIDIA.
What's the exit strategy?
Yeah, so normally, when those are the people that follow me on Twitter or watch me on Fast Money, I usually trade around a core position, which means that I'll have my core positions and then I'll trade tails around it. The tail actually became the core. So I think that the stock probably trades back up to the 120 range, and shorter term, obviously 115. That was just a blink of an eye of where it was today. So I think you're going to see higher prices. I think the market has to perform well. Market doesn't perform well. This is definitely a momentum stock, but I think you're going to see a 120 print sooner rather than later in the name.
Yeah, because I wonder, not that the bloom is coming off the rose, but that there's a sense when you see Apple Intelligence coming out without being trained on NVIDIA chip, I'm beginning, of some of these other rollouts that don't necessarily require those big, expensive workhorses. Are they kind of telling people that there's a way to participate in the AI rush without it necessarily being that NVIDIA share price doubles and it becomes a $6 trillion company or whatever? Have we kind of dialed that back a little bit, I wonder?
Yeah, I think that's a valid premise. But when you think about it, they still own 85% of the market share in AI. So maybe to the extent of the chip that's going to be used could change just depending on what sector of the economy that you're in. But ultimately, if you want premium, you're going to go with NVIDIA. Everyone that we heard from in large cap tech is increasing their spend in chips. Do they all need the highest price chip? Maybe not, but they're all going to be buying some aspect of NVIDIA, and nothing grows to the sky, Kelly, to your point. But I think we saw that drawdown pretty effectively last week, and I think people are getting back into it, understanding that the fundamentals are still sound.
Yeah, that's my last question. After everything that's just happened, it feels a little back to the future to me that we don't come out of this, repositioning or whatever it is and say, okay, time to rotate into the smaller caps and the mid caps and the value, this and whatever. It's kind of, okay, no, yields are lower. The NASDAQ's outperforming the Russell today. NVIDIA's taking off. And what does that tell you? Or is it a head fake?
Well, it tells me if you look at the chart on the IWM, if you look at the chart on the small caps, those names, 45% or so of small caps are unprofitable companies. Back in the 90s, that number was 15%. So people want to travel where they have the fortified balance sheet, where they have earnings, where earnings are growing. And that is still large cap tech and technology as a whole. So, yes, I think we are back to the future. And no matter which sector you are investing in, it will evolve with chips, and that takes technology to do it.
With respect to NVIDIA at the end of the month, listen, we think things are fine. And the bottom line there is demand is well ahead of NVIDIA's ability to supply. There's been all sorts of noise about, some of the product delays and whether or not the hyperscalers would step up for the CapEx that's needed. But for right now, and especially for this report at the end of the month, as long as demand is far ahead of supply, we think the company's going to sound good.
All right, let's talk about NVIDIA and the rest of the market. Today, we had choppy price action in the market, as you can see on this chart of the SPY. The SPY closed nearly flat on the day, while NVIDIA closed about 4% higher on the day. NVIDIA is also back above this support trend line that stretches all the way back to January of this year, so that is very encouraging to see. As I've been saying for a while now, NVIDIA's price action in the short term will be largely dependent on the rest of the market. So if the market pulls back heavily like we've seen in recent weeks, then it will weigh down on NVIDIA in the short term. By that same token, if the market moves higher, or at the very least remains flat like it did today, then NVIDIA is likely to move higher in the short term as we get closer to their next earnings report on August 28th. I am bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA as more hyperscalers, or planet eaters if you want to call them that, continue increasing their capex spending on AI by billions of dollars. Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, Tesla, and more are all desperate for NVIDIA's products right now, and I think NVIDIA is very likely to report a great quarter on August 28th. Now about the delay in Blackwell. NVIDIA is currently in a quiet period, so they cannot say very much until after they report earnings on the 28th. That being said, Supermicro CEO said last Tuesday that they may see some Blackwell chips in Q4 of this year, but they do not expect to see substantial volume from Blackwell until Q1 of 2025. So that may be our answer for now. Even if Blackwell is delayed, that doesn't really concern me when it comes to the long-term future of NVIDIA. Hyperscalers are guiding their capex spending higher by billions of dollars, and even if there is a delay in Blackwell, NVIDIA can just sell more H100 GPUs in the interim because demand is so great right now. Many companies will take whatever they can get from NVIDIA right now. So a delay is a short-term supply problem, but demand for NVIDIA's products is still strong and growing. So now, will we see pre-anticipatory running in NVIDIA between now and when they report earnings on August 28th? I think it depends on the rest of the market. As long as the market holds steady and doesn't have any more major drawdowns like we've seen the past couple weeks, then I do think we could see some pre-anticipatory running in NVIDIA. But we have to watch the rest of the market, because if the market moves lower, it will weigh down heavily on NVIDIA. So with that in mind, what are the current concerns for the market? For right now, the most pressing concerns are fears of recession, concerns about escalation in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and the unwinding of the carry trade in the Japanese yen. So let's briefly address each of these concerns so that you can be better prepared in the weeks ahead. First, fears of recession and worries about the economy. Tomorrow on Tuesday, we get PPI in the morning, and then we get CPI Wednesday morning. These are both very important inflation reports, and market participants will be watching both of them very closely. If inflation is rising, the market likely trades lower, And if inflation is cooling, then markets will likely trade higher as market participants increasingly bet on Fed rate cuts. Looking at this economic calendar from MarketWatch, you can see each report, the time they are scheduled to be released, the previous readings, and the median forecast. If PPI and CPI come in lower than expected, then markets most likely rally in the near term. If inflation comes in higher than expected, then the markets will most likely trade lower on the news. And now the second big concern, the Middle East and what's happening in Eastern Europe. I'm not going to go into too much detail about these topics because that is not what this channel covers. But pay attention to developments happening in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. If there is news of escalation in the conflicts happening there, then markets will likely trade lower on that news. And the third big concern for markets right now, the unwinding of the carry trade in the Japanese yen. Here is the reality of the situation. The Bank of Japan raised interest rates by about 25 basis points, and that caused global markets to sell off precipitously and caused US stocks to gap down heavily, as you may remember from last Monday. Now, I don't want you to miss this because it is very important. The Bank of Japan did say that they will wait until markets are less volatile before they raise interest rates again. When will that happen, though? When will they raise rates again? Because the fact that a mere 25 basis point hike caused global markets to gap down heavily is very concerning. So if you start hearing news about more Bank of Japan interest rate hikes, or if you see the Japanese yen trading noticeably higher, then markets will most likely trade lower on that news. And that is a very real concern to be aware of. Okay, so those are what I think are the three major concerns for the markets right now. Fears of recession, concerns about conflicts abroad, and worries about the unwinding of the carry trade in the Japanese yen. It is important to stay informed about all of these matters if you are trading NVIDIA between now and earnings on the 28th. Because if the market sells off substantially, it will weigh down heavily on NVIDIA. By that same token, if the market can remain calm between now and August 28th, then I think we could very well see NVIDIA trade higher as we get closer to earnings. It really does depend on what happens with the rest of the market at this point. Will the market weigh down NVIDIA, or will the market remain calm for long enough so that NVIDIA can rally in the shorter? We will see. Time will tell. With all of that being said, I hope you are all having a great start to the week, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.